All right, hello and welcome to Fruitful Homemaker. I have with me Mrs. Mary Beeke, and she has written a book that we're going to be going over today called Teach Them to Work. And so her husband is Dr. Joel Beeke, and as we find out in the book, he works very hard. So I actually went to the seminary page to find everything that he does because I didn't want to write it down and miss something. So I'm going to just go over what your husband Joel does. So he is the president and a professor at Puritan Reformed Theological Seminary, a pastor of the Heritage Reformed Congregation in Grand Rapids, Michigan, editor of Puritan Reformed Journal and banner of Sovereign Grace Truth, editorial director of Reformation Heritage Books, and president of Inheritance Publishers, and vice president of the Dutch Reformed Translation Society. Mm-hmm. So it seems like he has his hands full.
Yep, and I call him the BMW, the best man in the world. So
that's right.
He's a wonderful husband, too.
And then you raise, is it 3 children?
Yes, we have 3 grown children, and we have 7 grandchildren and 1 more on the way.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you are a teacher, or you were a teacher and a registered nurse?
Yes, I became a nurse when I was in my 20s, and I did not like that profession. It sort of terrified me, so I went back to school and became an elementary school teacher, and I taught for 5 years. But when we had our first child, then I stayed at home and raised our children. So I do a little bit of teaching with our Sunday school program at our church for an outreach program, and substitute a bit at our Christian school.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's go into, and you've also written a couple books, The Law of Kindness, which I have and is wonderful to look back on, especially when raising kids, and then Teach Them to Work, which we're going over today. And then you and your husband have co-wrote a series, it's a children's series called God and Me. And so we don't have that series yet, but it's I think it's 4 books in total.
Right. It focuses, one book is on faith, one is on hope, and one is on loving God, and the other is on loving others at a very, very young a level for very, very young children.
That's great. Yes, that has been on our list to get. I was just looking at them. I think it's watercolors were used. The illustrations are beautiful. And so we look forward. It's always good to find good literature for young kids that teach them about the Lord. And so that looks like a wonderful series.
I hope so. I hope it's blessed to many children.
Yes.
There's some instructions in there for parents, too, in teaching those lofty concepts to their children.
Yeah. All right, let's go to talking about Teach Them to Work. And so I think the question on the back of the book really sets the stage of what you're going to be learning, of what your mindset might be before you read it, and then how your mindset will change. And so it says, do you find it easier to just do chores yourself rather than struggling with your children to do them? And I know for us having young kids, if I have them help me with chores, it usually takes twice as long. Something's bound to be broken, like taking things out of the dishwasher. But if you have the lens of it being a burden, then you're going to most likely have this attitude towards many, if not all, of the things that need to be done around the house. And so with this book, as a parent, you learn about what the Lord has said about work, what work ethic is, why it's important, and overall how to glorify God in our lives through our work. And it is such an important thing to be teaching our children diligently. And so this book has been just so convicting and encouraging on how we should view work as a family. So I'm looking forward to going through these questions today and hopefully encouraging parents to, one, pick up this book and read it and be teaching their children how to work. All right, let's move to the first question. And that is, why should we as parents want to instill good work ethic in our children when they are young? And what are some biblical principles that help set the foundation for this?
Yes, it's so important to instill that biblical work ethic in our children because that's what they're going to do as adults. God created work, He created us, He works, and we must work. So that's one of the biblical principles that we have to instill in their minds. And we, as parents, are responsible for taking them from their very youth, zero in age, up to 18, and preparing them to be adults who are responsible, who contribute to their own welfare and to their own community. And as they are adults, we look forward to that time, and they're going to be working half of their waking hours. So we have 18 years to prepare them for that. It's done gradually, but it's very good to start young. We all know that very young children, they want to be big, they want to be like mommy and daddy, they want to do what mommy and daddy are doing, and we have to take advantage of that innate desire to be independent and to tap into their ambition. And when they want to feed themselves, I could picture our little grandchildren just last week. I do it, and don't want to be fed, and they want to do it themselves, and the food is all over the place, but they're learning how to be independent. And if we squelch that desire, we're not doing them a favor. So it's very important to start young too, so that they never remember a time when they didn't work. And if they're capable, then why not have them do it? I always say if a little child can take a bucket of Duplos and throw them all over the room, then they can take those Duplos and put them right back in the bucket. They might not want to. You might have to train them. You might even have to take that Duplo block and put it in their hand and make them put it in the bucket. But they can learn. They can learn. And by starting young, you build on that. And they get a lot of enjoyment and a lot of pride when they can sense, even a little toddler can sense this accomplishment and that they did something worthwhile. Some of the foundational biblical principles that we can instill in our children as we're teaching them to work are things like truth, like being honest. If we ask them, did you put your toys away? And they say yes, but they didn't. That's a learning opportunity to teach them to be truthful. We can teach them to honor God in all that we do and use our talents for His glory. We can teach them to love God above all and our neighbor as ourselves. We can serve others and give them that great joy. Teach them wisdom as they go along, as we're working alongside them. And we can teach them purity and holiness, to love what's good. So all those principles are so important and can be taught when we're working alongside and teaching our children to work.
Mm-hmm. I loved the section kindness and goodness, and how the home is the best training ground to teach this. Because you talked about how we have many good times together, but sadly we take out our frustrations the most on our siblings, parents, and children. And that was really convicting reading that, because we can put on a good front with others, but if we're frustrated or angry, our closest people around us are going to see that. And so it was just a good reminder that you wrote, the more love we show, the less space there is for negatives. And so that's just been something that I've been thinking about as we're in our home, of what do we want our children to be raised in, and that kindness and goodness is just so important.
Yeah, it's one of those ugly facets of our sinful human nature that the people we love the most are the ones who receive our negative behavior the most. And if we're aware of that, I think it helps to counteract that and pray to God for the love in our hearts to be exhibited.
That's right.
I always think it helps to think, when we're really frustrated with one of our family members, whether it's in the area of work or anything else, to think, what if something happened to that person, that they either were seriously injured or died today? What my regrets would be so huge, and try and treat them in that light.
That's right. But yeah, that what words of encouragement and wisdom from that, thinking about how much you love your loved ones and how you want them to be treated. So,
Right.
as we're talking about disciplining our children and being there to nurture and love them, how do we foster the transition from parent discipline to self discipline in our children as they are growing up?
Yeah. Children are, when they're young, they think in very concrete ways. And so it's all black and white. And then as they grow older, they're able to think in more abstract ways. So we have to meet them where they're at. So a little child, maybe 1 year old or 15-month-old, or even younger than that, when they show defiance, and they can show defiance at such a young age, we don't sit them down and give them a lecture on self-control and showing respect, because they just won't understand it. So that's where discipline comes in. But as they grow older, then we can have those conversations, and we can talk to them um, about discipline, self-discipline, and we can teach them, okay, when you were younger, mommy and daddy disciplined you when you didn't do your work, but now you have to learn how to do that yourself, so that when you are an adult, you can learn how to do this yourself. So we release on the parent discipline when we see that they are starting to learn self-discipline. And we do this with a lot of prayer and wisdom and calmness. We don't want to provoke them to anger, but if they are misbehaving and disobeying, then they have to have some kind of discipline that hurts. And they might be angry, but if we don't provoke them to anger, there's a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
If their behavior is making them angry, that's different than us provoking them to anger, and that's a fine line between that. But at every age, we explain at a level that they can understand why they are being required to work. And over the years and over the many, many experiences that are involved in teaching them to work and training them, we hope and pray that they take over the responsibility themselves, so that instead of us saying you've got to be up on time, that they take over and set their own alarm clock, and that they go to work on time, that they take responsibility for themselves. So we hope and pray that happens when they're in their teenage years. If they choose of their own volition to ignore our wisdom, then sometimes they have to learn self-discipline the hard way. By maybe they are late for work, and maybe they do get fired, but we warn them, and that's their responsibility. And sometimes the school of hard knocks is where some kids choose to learn their lessons. So starting out with our discipline so that they understand, and we pray that they take over the self-discipline, self-control, all that stuff by the time they're adults.
There is so much in this chapter that I really enjoyed, and one of the sections keep it positive, you wrote, every so often, we're remembering Paul's advice on rearing our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, so Ephesians 6:4. And you wrote, every so often, ask yourself and discuss with your spouse, are we finding the right balance between these two? Are we addressing sin while showing love? Are we balancing discipline with encouragement? Are we being more positive than negative? Are we enjoying our children, or are we burdened? And so I love that you have written throughout the book a lot of good questions to ask yourself, to ask and discuss with your spouse, and then also dialogue with your children on how to say something, or just an example of how to say things. And I think that is, at least for me, so helpful when I see that and see an example of what could be done, and can use that, modify it for our family. And so that was one that's really stuck out to me. Was just asking yourself those good questions when you're disciplining your children.
Yes, and I think at the root of staying positive is keeping the love in our hearts. And if we have that love in our hearts for our children, we will still discipline them because we want what's best for them, and sometimes that requires discipline, but it will keep the anger in control if we really think of how much we love our children. And sometimes, I mean, children can be very exasperating, and if we sometimes we need desperate prayer
Mm-hmm.
that God, just please, please give me wisdom, give me peace, give me calm in this situation when I'm really angry and really frustrated. But and husband, that's the beauty of husband and wife working together too. Like my husband once said, 80 to 90% of our interactions with our children should be positive. And I said, I think maybe it's time for you to spend a whole day with the kids. And I got him to tone that down to at least more positive than negative, because I don't know, unless, I don't know, I don't think I'm a negative person, but I think a lot of child rearing is saying no, can't be afraid to say no, but also follow it up with the positive and try and stay cheerful, even if you have to fake it.
You wrote here in Nehemiah 8:10, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Mm-hmm. And you wrote how you discovered that, you wish you would have discovered that when your children were young, because it was precious and just encouraging, in that you pray it will give strength, courage, joy, and peace. And so I've written that down to look at each morning, because it's true. And it's much needed reminder throughout the day.
Yes, that's why it's important to start our day with God too. Even if even if the kids are up from bed and you don't have that quiet time all alone, you can spend time with God with the kids playing around you. Mm-hmm. You know, I just believe that's really important, to keep that handle on God so that he can keep his hand on you.
Mm-hmm. And then my husband and I were just talking about this, so I wanted to bring it up, that, we read with our children through scripture. And so we're going through Proverbs again and family worship. And you wrote, when our children were young, we rotated reading through Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, the Gospels, and James at breakfast time. But we mostly read Proverbs. And why is that?
Mm-hmm. I'm a very practical person. Mm-hmm. And I just love how practical Proverbs is. I call it our toolbox for living and for raising children, especially. There's just the wisdom in there is so beautiful and so practical, and I just love it. Every verse is a treasure, and I just felt that was our kids. Went to our local Christian school, so we ate breakfast, and I had to get them off on the bus, and I just felt that was a good way for them to start the day. Mm-hmm. And Proverbs is such an important book for child rearing.
That's right. So if you have children and you're raising them, we know that each one has their own personalities and characteristics. They're unique in their own way. And so what ways do we custom train them when they're looking at areas of learning style, work style, and discipline?
Yes, each child is unique, just like a snowflake. And as parents, we have to have consistencies, and we have to be fair between all the children. But we also need to individualize our training for each child according to their uniqueness. Experts have done studies on learning styles. Some examples of different learning styles are there visual learners, there's verbal learners, there are physical learners, and there's different work styles. Some are analytical workers, some are expressive workers, some are driven workers, and each of our children has a predominant style, although I believe that these are not nice, neat, distinct categories, because I believe that we're all a mixture of all of them. But we each have our strengths, and if we can reach our child in their own area of strength, then they can learn better. For instance, if you're homeschooling and your child just loves to read, well, you might assign that child a research paper. And someone else who's more hands-on, if you're teaching them how a volcano works, you might say, build a model of a volcano, build an actual one out of plaster of Paris or something like that. So if you can tap into their work styles and their learning styles, I think we can reach them in a better way and hopefully draw out their skills and their talents and prepare them for adult life. In my days as teaching, I remember having students that one student, if her life depended on it, she could not comprehend the meaning of a story, and yet she grew up to be an incredible homemaker and cook. That was her skill. One girl just couldn't spell. That wasn't her strength, but she became the best phlebotomist in the hospital. And when cancer patients would come in, they wanted her because she could find their vein. So they all have skills. And sadly, sometimes our schools, I think, are more academically geared. And there's some kids that have to suffer through 13 years of education in order to get out there and work with their hands, because they are very intelligent in a way that's different from school. So if we at home can channel their different strengths, then I think we can really help them find their way in life in the area of work.
Mm-hmm. We're starting to see, so we have 3 kids. My oldest is almost 5, and then we have a son who's 3, and then a little baby. Her name's Annie Beth. She just turned 1. And so with Gracie, my oldest, and Jacob, we're really starting to see their different learning styles, their work styles. And because I do a little homeschool curriculum with them. And so Gracie is very meticulous. She loves to write things down, and she's just a great learner. But my son is not. He likes to be hands-on and playing with his Legos as we're counting or reading a book. And most of the time, I don't really think he's listening. But then later on, he's repeating what I said or counting his Legos and all that. And so it really, after reading this and then watching the kids, you can see their uniqueness in how they learn. And so that's been a joy to see.
And I think something to remember there too is that even if they have a weakness in a certain area, they still have to learn at least a competency in that area. If they're not good at math, you can't just say we'll skip math, because they still have to know a certain amount of math in order to live as an adult. So it may be hard, but if we can encourage them and still teach those that might not be their life's profession, but they still have to learn things that they maybe aren't good at.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good reminder. All right, would you share a few different ways to reason with ourselves to accomplish the goal of teaching our children to work?
Yes, I think our internal attitude and our the way that we approach a task is so important. And as we said before, teaching children to work can be very frustrating. But if we are ready for it and we sort of have these attitudes set in our mind ahead of time, I think we can be ready when those frustrating moments come. And as we mentioned, spending time in God with prayer, with God in prayer to begin the day, and asking Him for wisdom throughout the day. My favorite prayer was just, Lord, help me. Lord, help me. Sometimes the kids would say, "What'd you say, Mommy?" And I would say, I'm just praying, Lord, help me. And so God can help us moment to moment. Another attitude that I found was very helpful was I would tell myself to think like a teacher, to put myself in teach them to work mode or teaching mode. And I would just tell myself, okay, Mary, you didn't learn everything the first time around when you were a kid. So they need repetition. As long as they're not being defiant or disobedient, be patient and teach them again. So teacher mode helped me just be a little bit more patient and stay calm. So you can be calm and still administer discipline, and you can be patient, but that doesn't mean you let them run all over you. I'm afraid that my technique was sometimes to be patient, be patient, be patient, be kind, be kind, be kind, and then get frustrated. And then you say things that you regret later. You can come across with disgust and anger, and that's not good. It's much better to we'll talk about discipline a little bit later, but it's much better to stay calm. Another technique that I think helps is to just the word picture or the mental picture that I would use, like at bedtime, everybody's tired, they're resisting going to bed, even though that's where they need to be, and I'm feeling upset. But I would think in my mind like I'm on a climbing wall, and I'm almost to the top. And if I can just hang on and hit that bell at the top and get them to bed, then everything will be okay. But if I get upset with them, then I'm going to look at them later and see their beautiful faces laying there sleeping, and I'm going to feel so guilty. And then I'm going to have to apologize the next day because I said things that I shouldn't have said. So if I could just hang on and stay calm, and then I can sleep in peace myself too that night. So just trying whatever works for you to try and reason with yourself to deal with your children in the best way for them.
I enjoyed throughout your book all of the practical advice that's there, and through the hard moments, because sometimes it can be, when you're reading a book, you of course get wonderful godly advice, but sometimes it's nice to have, okay, when you're feel like you're at the breaking point, or before you get there and that something's going to be hard, to have things like the teacher mode, the visual pictures, and even Be a Robot, where you have these little nuggets of wisdom of, okay, let's switch to teacher mode. Or I love the visual pictures, like what you were just talking about, of you're climbing a mountain, you're almost there, you can get there, because like you said, that guilt is there afterwards if you lose your cool. And so I've really just appreciated all of your wisdom, especially in this chapter.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to, and so we've been talking, your book is split up into 2 sections. The first one is parental principles. And so now we're going to move on to practical principles. And so when we help our children think through the mental process, how do we help our children think through the mental process of how to approach a task?
Yes, some children are just really good at this naturally. They have an organized way of thinking. They go at a task with diligence and perseverance, and they're natural workers. But I think the majority of children don't have this naturally and have to learn. And they might see a task in front of them as a huge mountain that they can't climb or that they don't want to. So I think by helping them think through the task and work through it together, side by side with them, like if you tell a 3-year-old, go clean your room, and then you're upset when they don't, it's because they don't know what to do. So you go to the room with them and you say, okay, we're going to make your room look really nice. Let's put your clothes away first. So you tidy up everything and you do it with them. And this also shows them that you're not above doing menial tasks with them. Okay, next thing, let's dust. This is how you dust. And next thing, okay, let's vacuum. And then when you're done, you say, look at this. Look at how neat this looks. And after you do that over time, then they learn how to do it themselves. And when they're able to, then they're responsible to do it themselves. And hopefully they'll be willing to. If they're not, well, that's another story. Then you have to deal with that. But teaching them the steps of things. It may require, like, let's say your child wants to start a lawn care business. They're 11 years old and they can work. They mow your lawn, but they don't drive yet. And say, okay, you want to earn some money and you want to start your own business. Let's sit down. Let's write a list. So you let them, and together guide them, write a business plan. You can do this work around the house to earn extra money. And then you can go out and buy a used lawnmower on Facebook Marketplace. And you can continue to mow our lawn and practice getting good at that. Go around the neighborhood, distribute a flyer, get some business, and then mow their lawns, and then learn how to fix the mower. So you help them think through the different tasks. And I think it's also, I might say, very important here to give them tasks that are boring and drudgery, because we as adults, there's so much of our life that, look at a mother. Okay, you change a diaper. Okay, in an hour, you got to change it again. You do laundry next week, tomorrow, next day, you have to do more laundry. There are so many parts of life, even if you have your dream job, that are drudgery. And they have to learn how to have the mental strength to persevere through that. And also to learn how to do steps. Most jobs are not just one step and it's done. Just think of baking cookies. How many different steps are involved in that? And they have to have the mental strength to be able to say, okay, this is one step, I'm done, going on to the next step, and not to think of it as a huge insurmountable mountain, but to have the attitude, I could do this because I've done it before. I can do this.
One of my favorite quotes in this chapter was, there's no comparison between the joy of accomplishment and the guilt of avoidance. And that's something that, we want our children to enjoy accomplishing something. And that's just so important. Instead of, you feel that guilt of avoiding things when you know they need to be done. And so you know that as they grow up, they feel that as well. And so encouraging them to want to accomplish tasks, and that's a good thing, and be encouraging, like you said, to them when we're trying to get the rooms clean. And so that's just been something that I've been thinking about, is the joy of accomplishment versus the guilt of avoidance.
Yes, and that comes from a 62-year-old woman who, when she was a little girl, would go through a lot of work to avoid work. And I did feel guilty. And I don't know why I just didn't do the work, because then it would have been done. My sisters and my brother did that, and I was still trying to get out of it while they were all done and out there playing. So you have to help our kids work through those things in order to get that joy of accomplishment.
Another favorite quote from your book is, once you get started, keep moving. Even slow motion is better than no motion. How do we help our children start a task and finish what they started?
Yes, it's about momentum. And this is true especially for procrastinators, which I have a lot of experience in as well. And it's for the kind of kid whose default position is to have his parking brake on. And it's just a matter of getting started. And there's a statement. I always thought it was, a job begun is half done. That's the procrastinator's version of the statement. Like, once you get started, you've got the momentum, and then you're already on your way to accomplishing it. It's like it's half done. But the statement really is, and I found this out writing this book, a job well begun is half done. So it's all about planning how to do the job well, and then you have to do half the work because you've planned well. But anyway, the procrastinator's version is, in my own words, is, a job begun is half done. So we set the example to our kids. We might need to prod them along. We might need to work alongside with them. But it's getting started. And once you get started, you have your mind in gear. You're focused on the task. You're doing one step, then another, and you're keeping in mind what the end goal is, and you've got the momentum. So we can encourage kids like that. We can praise them and thank them. And when the job is done, we can point out, see, you did it. And that's great. And we accomplished the task. Again, if they resist when they know how to do the job, then that's another matter. And then we have to deal with discipline or withholding privileges. But when they're young, when they're learning a task, we can do it alongside with them and get them going and encourage them.
The section decide and do. So deciding, what you're going to do and then going and doing it is one that, after reading this book, I realized that I need to work on, because I can easily have almost like a circle of things that I'm working on at one time. Of, I'm doing some of the dishes, but then I'm going over to clean the living room, but then I'm going and sweeping the floor, a little bit of it. And so each task is half done. And at the end, everything is completed, but my mind is going in circles because everything is messy until it's just all not. It's like at the same time. So I noticed my daughter Gracie doing that too. When I've asked her to clean her room, I put one article of clothing away, but then I'm gonna play with my jewelry and try to sort that and this. And so we've been working on telling each other, let's pick one thing to do, and then we'll move on to the next task. And so that has been really helpful, because you feel as if you're getting more done. You're accomplishing one thing and then moving on to the next. And it's just a much simpler process.
Yeah. I think as a mother, there's a certain amount of flitting around that's natural.
Yes.
Because when you're, if there's a need in the living room, your child is crying because they
Yes.
fell or something, and you're over there taking care of that, and you think, okay, I'll pick this up right while I'm here. Some of that is very natural. It's sort of like working on the way, but yeah, focusing on getting certain tasks done. But even in the kitchen too, you take something to the refrigerator, and then you get something out of the refrigerator, and then, yeah, women can multitask in that way. That's why God
true.
made mothers, with a mind that you can sense when something's not right with the kids while you're cooking dinner and you're thinking of your plans for tomorrow. We could do that.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
But the decide and do and focusing on certain tasks is also good. So it's a balance.
Balance. Yes, you have to have a balance. What should our perspective be on time, and how do we teach our children to treasure it?
Time is so important because we have it now, but it's gone tomorrow. Yesterday's time is gone, and we don't know how much time we have for the future. And time is a huge gift of God. It's my husband, really, he is so big on time. Of using time wisely and efficiently and for God's honor. And he's really taught me a lot in this area. And the most important thing to use our time with is since we don't know how much we have in the future, is making sure of our calling and election, and making sure that we're right with God and that our children know the Lord. So that's our biggest work of teaching and training our children. But on a practical level, time is kind of an abstract thing, and it's so maybe young children might not understand it so well, but we instruct them as they grow up, and we instruct them as we're working alongside them, and as we're doing family worship, we talk about time being a gift of God, and we set an example. That's very important too, of how to use our time. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean we are working every single hour that we're awake. No, we have family time, we have play time, we have fellowship time, relaxing time, and so time is a treasure. It's not meant to be spent in idleness or sinful activities, but of course we can rest and relax. And in the area of time, I think the biggest thief of time is our screens. And maybe with little kids, you don't have that issue yet, but our screens are competing for our time, for children, for adults, and we have to be very, very wary of that.
Yes. I enjoyed the section on practical ideas on treasuring time. Would you talk a little bit about your husband, Joel, his method that's useful for children also in assigning tasks? And if you don't
Yes,
remember, I have it in front of me. If you could.
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit drawing a blank. Which
Oh,
page is
no
that
worries.
in my book?
Nope, that is in 128. So I could read them. It says every day he assigns his tasks into 3 categories:
Oh, right.
the must do, should do, and like do. And then he starts plotting them through in order.
Yes. Okay, I'll take it from there. My husband is, as I said, is very in tune with time, and he has lists. He's an organized thinker, but he has everything listed on paper of and that he goes through that every day: must do, should do, and want to do. And he doesn't usually get to the want to do things because he's so busy with the other things. So the must do things, of course, take priority. And then if he has time, he does the should do. And then, if there's any time, want to do. So sometimes the should do things move up to the must do list because of deadlines. And that's how he goes through his day. But he really accomplishes a lot, because he not only does what's required of him, but he's just so driven to get the gospel out to as many people as possible that just motivates him to write books, to teach, and just do all kinds of things, getting the word out, doing conferences. But yeah, that's his method, the 3 lists.
We've kind of been using that. I have a notebook that I just keep in the kitchen with me and just writing down odds and ends of like what we need and what we want to do. And so we just go through and say, okay, what is something we need to do today? Laundry. And then what's something we should do? Sweep the porch. And then what's something we want to do is paint. And so we'll just kind of write those down. And sometimes it's need to do is bake a loaf of bread. And so once we do that, we kind of check it off our list, and my daughter Gracie, she looks at it and then she'll go, okay, we did that, or this needs to move up, and then it was funny one day, I think it was on a Saturday, my husband was talking about the things that we needed to do outside, because usually Saturdays are working outside days or getting things done around the house. And Gracie's like, wait, I need to get my notebook. We have to write this down. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, well, we've been working on writing down, prioritizing. And so she just loves that. She loves writing and keeping track of things. And so that's just been a fun little thing that we've been doing. But it's also helpful too.
Yeah, I have a daughter like that too.
Yes.
And she's in her upper 20s now.
Oh yeah.
I also have a creative daughter that's very artistic, and and she's a little bit more like me, and the one daughter is focused, and the other daughter is
Mm.
very creative. So they both have their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful to see the variety.
Yes, absolutely. So, what are natural consequences and how do we use them well with our children?
Yes, I think this takes a bit of planning, and as husband and wife, you can sit down and talk about what sorts of behavior to expect from your children and how you're going to react to them. And when I say natural consequences, I believe that we fit, and this is both positive and negative. So in the negative, we fit the punishment to the crime, to put it in those terms. So we arrange for circumstances to fit their behavior. So yelling is probably not effective. At least it won't continue to be effective over a long period of time. But let's say your teenager, Mandy, knows that her dirty clothes need to be in the hamper, and that you'll do the laundry, but the clothes need to be in the hamper, not on the floor right next to it. So if she hasn't listened to your words, then you just have to simply use natural consequences and not wash her clothes. And then when it comes time when she needs her favorite sweater for a certain event, and that sweater's dirty and it's wrinkled and sitting on the floor, she'll be very upset. But hey, she had fair warning, and hopefully she'll learn the lesson that next time you put the sweater in the hamper. So that's a natural consequence. Um, on the positive side, praising little kids for what they are doing, gratitude to the older kids, and privileges that come with a job well done. You might say, hey, you did a really great job and fixing something yesterday. I appreciate that. Let's stop for a donut. And I go into a lot of detail in the book because I think using natural consequences is a very important way to prepare our children for the adult world, because the adult world has natural consequences, and we want them to learn these lessons at home so that they can make their mistakes under our roof and be ready to meet the employer's expectations and carry out their own responsibilities. We don't want them to have to get a bad review from their boss because they didn't carry out their own duties. But we want to train them at home. We don't want them to get fired for being late. So we make it painful for them when they're late. Maybe if they didn't get up on time, we leave them behind for going somewhere. So hopefully they learn how to be responsible because of the natural consequences that we've instilled. And I go into a whole lot more detail in this in the book.
Mm-hmm. Would you talk a little bit, because I felt like this section was so important, about just some of the emotional do's and don'ts when you're looking at consequences?
Yes, can I
One part. Oh, of course.
take?
Yep.
It's
on page.
Yeah, go ahead.
Page 145
Okay.
is page 145. It stuck out to me that, we need, and a good reminder that we need to come to grips with our own feelings and then channel them for our children's benefit. And I know we've talked about this as we've been going, but if we're angry, then we need to cool down. And I can't remember if you talked about it or if I was reading about sometimes you just need to go in the bathroom and just throw some water on your face, say a prayer, and then come back out when you're calm and collected to talk with your children, because it can be so easy to lead with our emotions. And as we're teaching our children about their emotions and how we use them, they're looking to us as the leaders of these examples. And So that was just like a wonderful reminder for me. And that they must, oh, go ahead.
Yes, the verse again, provoke not your children to anger, comes to mind here. So when we're angry and we lash out, it it isn't good for the whole situation, but it also isn't good as an example to our children, because if we lash out in anger, they're going to learn, okay, this is how you handle things. And you don't control your anger because mommy and daddy didn't control their anger. And so it's setting an example of how to handle stress and how to handle conflict. So if we can, like get a hold of ourselves, just like you just described, and prayer is such a big part of that, because emotions are so strong, and God can help us with that. But it's not like we're Stoics and that we don't have emotions. So there's a difference between lashing out in anger at our children, and calming down and coming back to them and saying, okay, I'll talk to you in 15 minutes. So they've got 15 minutes to worry about what's going to happen, because I know they did something wrong, and you've got 15 minutes to cool down. But you can tell them, I was very upset when you did this, because I know that you are able to do better. You can set a higher expectation. I'm disappointed in you. I'm upset with you, and I expect better behavior in the future. Or you can say, you hurt mommy's feelings when you did that, or explain how you're feeling. And it's not bad if they feel guilt, because if they did something wrong, they should feel guilty. And there's also a difference in putting someone on a guilt trip, like putting them down and making them feeling like belittled. We don't belittle our children, or handle them with spite, or be snobby to them or snarky. But we can explain our own feelings. Mommy was disappointed in you when you did that, and I know you can do better. And so we can explain our feelings, but we don't humiliate them, and we don't demean them, and we don't injure them with our words. So there's a fine line there.
Yes, what good reminders. I also enjoyed the checklist that you wrote about being fair and disciplined. And there are many, but just asking yourselves before, going into discipline is, are they working according to their ability? Are my expectations reasonable for their age, or am I a perfectionist? Are they trying? Are they gradually improving? And there's others, but those are such great questions to ask yourself to make sure that you are being fair with your discipline. And one thing that's been helpful for us is that a variety is good. And so I think we were really sticking with one avenue. And then after reading this, it was, especially with this chapter on natural consequences of, I asked you to do this, do this, and then we're going outside, whether that's hanging up your clothes or putting something away. And if they didn't, then it's, okay, well, before you go outside, I need you to do this, and then working from there. But it really gave me a whole new category on natural consequences for our children. That has been so helpful.
Right. And I might add something right here too, is if you see defiance, defiance in any shape or form at any age has to be dealt with right away. It has to be squelched immediately, because defiance is ugly. It's not cute. Sometimes people laugh when a little child is defiant, but it needs to be squelched. And if you have a teenager who's being defiant, it's a lot harder to do, but it still has to be done. So if they're defiant to you, they're going to be defiant to their future employer, to their spouse, and even to God himself, because their will has to be made submissive to authority. And that's your job as parents to do it. It's a hard job, but it just has to be done with a lot of prayer and wisdom.
Yes, that's we pray for discernment in recognizing when the defiance comes up, because like you said, that it doesn't just usually go away. It continues to grow as they grow older. So what
Right.
are some tangible and intangible blessings that come from work?
Yes, the biggest tangible blessing is earning money, and as you get older, or in the home, and being able to purchase things you want and need, and that's just part of God's economic plan. You work, and you can eat, and you can buy a house, and you work together within the home in order to support each other. You share the cooking, you share the cleaning, and I think all those benefits are part of God's plan. So I also think that children need to have a taste of having their own money when they're young and when they're in the home, so that they don't become a spendthrift when they do get their first paycheck. And if we give them practice in the home, then they learn. That's just another thing that we are responsible to teach them, is how to handle money. I think the best approach is to have certain jobs in the house just be part of being a family. You help out with the cleaning, you help out with the tidying up, household tasks. Your payment is a roof over your head and warm food to eat. But then there's other jobs, and it's up to parents to decide how to divide the labor. But there's other jobs that you should get paid for. And we had the privilege of having some very wise friends tell us a plan when our children were very young, and this is what we followed. We had a little notebook for each child, and we took the money that they earned. They had a newspaper route, like from the time they were 9, and then they would earn money around the house. So we took all that money every month or two, and we divided it. 10% first to tithing, 35% went into the bank for their future, for marriage or college. And then about 20% of it was divided between books, clothes, car, depending on their age at that time. And then they always had 35% to spend as they wished. And that gave them an opportunity to make their own decisions, to get independence. And they put a lot of thought into how they were going to spend that precious 35%. And it's good practice. You can guide them. If they spend it all on candy, well, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone. But if they spend it on something that they get, maybe a pet that they get a lot of enjoyment out, or to build a business, or something, a doll that they really enjoy, then they're learning to make those decisions. So, and sometimes these things can lead to whatever their life's calling might be too. Then the intangible blessings are, I think, maybe even more valuable. And they are, some of them might be this, the sense of fulfillment and joy that comes, that's just deep inside them when they accomplish a task. I have some Brazilian friends who are going through my book as a book study, and one of them sent me a video of her 13-month-old taking his own dirty diaper after she had changed him, and dumping it in the trash. And he had this just beaming look on his face. He was so proud of himself because he did this job. And so there's something just inside of us that gives fulfillment and joy when we do something, when we work. Also, we talked about a sense of accomplishment, and that's especially true if a job is hard. If there's been obstacles, we did it. We accomplished it. We finished the job. And we talked about self-confidence, that a kid knows, okay, I did this before, I can do this, and that's valuable for their whole life. Working makes a child feel worthwhile and valued. He's got purpose. He contributes to his own family. He's got a job, and he's needed. it teaches them to persevere. And we talk too about having boring jobs and jobs with steps. So they learn perseverance, and that's very valuable. And I also think it's so important to do service work, to serve others, and to give them that joy of it's more blessed to give than to receive. Because once they experience serving, I'll tell you, it's addicting. My parents, like my dad, would always give blood, and they would be involved in community work. And when that's part and parcel of your daily life and of your heart, then your children will pick that up too, and they will love to serve others and share with others. So all those tangible and intangible blessings will equip them to be competent workers as adults and to serve others. And hey, they might whine, they might cry, they might be full of self-pity, they might resist, but don't let those behaviors stand in the way of your kids receiving the blessings that will come when they work. So be strong and require them to work through the pain in order for them to receive the rewards at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that wisdom on tangible and intangible blessings as we raise our kids. So, in a nutshell, this is our last question about the book. What are the most important principles to remember as we teach our children to work?
In writing this book, I felt my own inadequacies because I don't see myself as a naturally super strong worker. I've had to learn to work, and I've worked through it and enjoy work. But I thought I need to have some other people's experiences. I need to talk to other people. So I interviewed quite a number of families that have done this journey successfully. And there were certain characteristics that I observed in these families. And to summarize them, I came up with 4 different characteristics. The first one is entreaty or prayer. You can't do this alone. You just need God. You need to go to God for his help in prayer, for strength, and for wisdom. And you need his word, the scriptures, to get that wisdom. And we mentioned especially the book of Proverbs. So entreaty. Second one is example. You can't teach your children to work by giving orders from the couch. You need to set an example of diligence so that they see you working, and they say in their thoughts, Mom and Dad work hard, and that's just what adults do. And I'm going to be like that when I grow up. So that example involves working together with them side by side. They learn as they work with you, and it also bonds you together. And like we said, it might take longer for them to do the job, and it won't be perfect, but to nurture them in independence. And it's an investment in the future, because even though it takes them 3 times as long to unload the dishwasher, they will unload the dishwasher for you completely in a year. So invest in the future in that way. The third one would be expectation, and that would be something that when you have things firmly implanted in your mind, I expect my children to work, and I expect them to show effort and to work at the best of their abilities. No excuses, no complaining, just do your work, kids. And then they'll sense that attitude, and they'll be less likely to resist when we don't have room for their shenanigans. But some will resist, and so we have to be ready for that too. And we have to be ready to implement a plan and nip their resistance in the bud. So every human being has original sin. So if our kids might sense our hesitation that, okay, if I disappear and go to my room around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock when Mom's fixing supper, then it's too much work for her to call me up from the room, and she won't ask me to help her fix supper, so I'll just disappear. So they'll take advantage of us to get out of what they perceive as painful work. So just don't let that happen. So have an expectation that they will work. And then the fourth one is enjoyment. So enjoy the work that you do. If you have a hard time working yourself and don't enjoy it, then you've got to spend some time in prayer and in scripture, knowing that work is a gift of God, and ask him to help you to enjoy it, even the drudgery work, and then display an attitude of enjoyment to your children, even if you have to fake it a little bit, but try and stay positive, and they will eventually develop a positive attitude to work. Work is part of life. If it's a drudgery and if it's a burden, you're going to spend half of your waking hours as an adult doing something that you consider a drudgery. How much better it is to ask God to change your attitude towards work and to instill that positive attitude in your children too. And I like what you said too, like doing the necessary things and then, hey, reward yourself with fun things afterward, and your kids will enjoy that too. And then expect a lot of blessings, and those blessings will bring a lot of enjoyment too. And talk about the blessings with your children. So I think of work as positive, and I hope that this book can be an encouragement to you.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing those principles and how, work is a gift, and to be reminded of that. It's a gift to us and it is a gift to our children. And so thank you so much for answering those questions about your book. And
You're welcome.
the last question I have is the fruit of our home, which is a question I ask each guest. And so, do you have a family favorite recipe that you would share with us?
Yes, it's not necessarily a 100% healthy one, but it's scotcheroos.
Oh,
Scotcheroos are,
scotcheroos.
yeah, Rice Krispie bars with peanut butter in them, and topping of chocolate and butterscotch chips. So that's a
Oh,
family favorite.
that's perfect. I can't wait to share that one. I'll make sure to put that up on our page soon. And I think that is more of a northern recipe. So we're from Michigan, and I know you and your husband and family live there. And I remember I made it for a get together down here, and it was like no one had ever tasted anything like it before.
Really?
And so it was a fun treat. Yes. And I remember looking it up afterwards, and it's something that like the Midwest, or it's very popular in Michigan to do. And so it's just a fun little treat, and it's a good reminder of home for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes. Thank you.
yes, thank you again for taking time to talk about your book. And for those listening, you can find this book on reformationheritagebooks.com, and it's on Amazon, and we'll also be providing a link below where you can click on it and it'll direct you right to the book. And I hope this episode would be encouraging to you in building work ethic, not only in our children, but also in ourselves, and all for God's glory. So have a wonderful day.